The New Orleans Saints are the best team in the NFL. No, I'm just kidding. But they just got a massive win that they desperately needed to get. We got all of that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as the Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, New Orleans Saints quarterback Spencer Rattler might not be making headlines after this game, but he certainly made some headway in terms of holding on to the Saints starting quarterback position. The New Orleans Saints young defensive core provides not only our turning point, but our players of the game in their win against the New York Giants. And we'll kick everything off with what you'll be talking about this week, which is that the New Orleans Saints have won a football game. We got all that coming up for you on today's episode. We appreciate you very much, whether it's your first time or your next time being here with us this time, making us your first listen and being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at Mazda. Like all the players that you know and love, Mazda sweats every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only just the beginning. Stay tuned for some highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward Mazda Move and Be Moved. And let's dive right into what you'll be talking about this week.
This is what you'll be talking about.
And it doesn't get any easier than this. You're going to be talking about the fact that the New Orleans Saints have won a football game. And listen, I know that sounds sarcastic, but I truly mean that. This was a game that the New Orleans Saints absolutely needed to win for confidence purposes, for progress purposes. It was kind of the next step, right? We saw this team get blown out in Seattle, but then we saw 3 games where this team really hung in and was competitive all throughout. And so to come now into week 5 and get a victory, and a convincing one at that, not one that you had to struggle for towards the end of the game. We're talking about a 12-point victory in a game where they were favored by only 1.5 points. And at first, when they opened, were actually underdogs at home in this game. And so they took that and then turned that into what was kind of a statement victory for this team. And it was a statement in a couple of different ways. It's the first win since week 14 of the 2024 season. That was also a game against the Giants, by the way. So the last team that the team beat were the Giants. And the most recent team that the team beat, or the next team that the team would beat, would be the Giants. 301 days apart from one another. One of the longest active losing streaks in the NFL up until it was snapped after this noon game on Sunday. Beyond that, it's also the first home win for New Orleans since week 11 last year, 329 days. The New Orleans Saints have not been able to really get their grasp back on the dome field advantage days. And this was a game where the New Orleans Saints and Saints fans, the Who Dat Nation, were in sync the entire time. What is it? Simpatico? Like they were just breathing together all throughout this game. It was awesome. From the moment that Taysom Hill and Foster Moreau went out and led the Who Dat chant, both those guys getting some pretty good snaps throughout this game as well. Taysom Hill getting to carry the ball a couple of times. Also threw a 19-yard pass to Juwan Johnson at one point, one of the several explosive plays the Saints had in this game, if you're defining explosive by 15 or more yards. Then you go from that to 5 straight takeaways for the first time since the 90s for New Orleans. Beyond that, you had these big plays down the field that were made, the big 87-yard touchdown between Spencer Rattler and Rashid Shaheed. The dome was the Superdome again, right? Chopper Style was playing, everybody was dancing, all this stuff. It was great. It was awesome. They had some Soul Rebels going. Like it was good. Like it was an awesome home environment for probably the first time in a little while, to where it ended and culminated in a victory for the New Orleans Saints. And when I say first time in a while, I mean the first time in 329 days. So worth keeping in mind there. The Saints had their first 5 takeaway game since week 9 of the 2023 season up against the Chicago Bears. 5 consecutive takeaways for the first time since the 90s. It was the first win for quarterback Spencer Rattler as a starting quarterback, and the first win for head coach Kellen Moore in his first year as a head coach. So all of that came together in this big victory. And there were a couple of big reasons why that victory came to be. The Saints opened up, well, I don't want to say that they opened up their offense, because a lot of the things that they've been doing were built off of stuff that they were already doing through the first 4 weeks anyway. But then on top of that, they connected on that big 87-yard touchdown pass coming out of the break, and, one play drive, 87 yards. That was the first 80-plus yard touchdown for New Orleans in a regular season game since 2016, for the first time, and if you include the playoffs, since 2018. It was a humongous moment there. And because of that, it created more moments downfield where the Giants had to respect the opportunity of the New Orleans Saints deep ball, because they got beat on a two-man route for 87 yards while the Saints were back in their own territory. And then after that, the Giants secondary started to get grabby, because all of a sudden they had to respect that deep ball. And then they drew some penalties. At one point, they drew a 19-yard penalty and a 16-yard penalty, both defensive pass interference, back to back. And so this is a perfect example of the value of having the big explosive plays, the deep ball, all those pieces. That was the perfect example of that. And so for New Orleans, that now gives you something to build off of. You've now put it on tape that you can do that, and that's there. And so now all of a sudden defenses have to respect that. That wasn't the case during the first 4 weeks. The Saints were a very operating close to a line of scrimmage type of team for the most part early on, particularly in the passing game. And then now all of a sudden, Spencer Rattler comes in. He goes with a season high of 225 yards. He gets a career high in yards per attempt at 7.3 yards per passing attempt. And all of a sudden now there's a new element and a new layer to this team with an offense that ran for under 100 yards for only the second time so far this season. Ran for around 80, I think it was 88 yards in total. And some of it was that the Saints stopped running Kendre Miller. I wish they would have actually continued to run Kendre Miller. Kendre Miller walked away in this game with more rushes than Alvin Kamara. And I think it made sense, because Kendre Miller felt like the hot hand in the run game for a little while. He was picking up chunk yards. He was fighting through contact, constantly picking up yards after contact, forcing broken tackles, all those pieces. Like, all of that stuff makes a big difference for what you have as an identity of a football team. Kendre Miller, 10 carries in this game, with Alvin Kamara with 8. And Kendre Miller averaged 4.1 yards per carry. He continues to improve and continues to look good. Meanwhile, Spencer Rattler completed 21 of his 31 passes for that 225 yards, again, season high there. And it had one touchdown of 87 yards and a 99.5 passer rating in the process. And Rashid Shaheed is the first New Orleans Saints player so far this season to top 100 receiving yards. Caught 4 of his 5 targets for 114 receiving yards. And a touchdown, averaged 28.5 yards per reception. That's more like it. That's the Rashid Shaheed everyone knows, loves, and or fears if they're having to play up against them. And not only did Rashid Shaheed have an 87-yard touchdown, but he also had a huge catch in the middle of the field on an option route on a 4th down, showing you that the role is expanded, that he's not just a deep threat. So these are the little nuggets that you the little seeds that you start to plant that you can build off of all throughout this season. Does this mean that the New Orleans Saints are a playoff team? No. Does this mean that the New Orleans Saints are a championship team? No. Does that matter? No, it doesn't. What matters is that the New Orleans Saints are showing improvement as they continue to move forward. Now what they need to show is they can continue that improvement, continue that trajectory moving forward here throughout the season. That's what will be next. But for right now, a New Orleans Saints win is what you'll be talking about. Coming up next, we're going to take a look at our turning point as well as our players of the game, which all come down to some really, really good showings from some young defensive pieces that could be building blocks for this New Orleans Saints team's future. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends at Square. There are some of those businesses that just simply make the neighborhood the neighborhood. Maybe it's that your favorite sports bar where you go to watch all of your games. Maybe it's that great coffee shop around the corner that knows your order by heart, or that fantastic local restaurant that's been serving your community for generations. There are just simply those businesses that bring people together. And when neighborhood businesses thrive, the neighborhoods thrive as well. And that is where Square comes in. Square powers some of those neighborhood favorites that you're thinking about. I know that's certainly the case here I live not too far from Mid-City in the Lafitte Greenway, and you can see Flower Moon Bagels right there off the Greenway. They are powered by Square, and they are one of my favorite places to go. You can catch them serving coffee and bagels every single morning. So Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/LockedOnNFL to learn more. But before you do, go and support your favorite neighborhood spot. We will be happy that you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood. This episode is brought to you by Mazda's moving the game forward. For those who believe that it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are some of those moments that do more than just put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. In this week's moment that helped to move the game forward was a pair of interceptions, actually, by cornerback Kool-Aid McKinstry. Kool-Aid has had a bit of a challenging opening to the season, but he's a guy that's been working really, really hard in the background, and things finally began to move forward for him as it looked like the floodgates open when it came to him being an impact player on the defensive side of the football, getting a pair of interceptions, the first 2 of his career in this win up against the New York Giants. He'll definitely be a big part of what we're talking about when it comes to the foundational pieces on the New Orleans Saints defense. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to every Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, family, the New Orleans Saints get the big win that they need, and they get it really on the backs of some fantastic performances, particularly from some young core defensive players in this game. And the first thing that I want to highlight is really where this game kind of all came together for New Orleans. We call it the turning point, and it might not necessarily be the play that you're thinking.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
It can be really easy to take a look at the turning point as maybe that 87-yard touchdown pass, which got the Saints within 1, kind of changed the momentum of the game and everything like that. But I'm going to go one step further. Not too long after that, there was a play on a 3rd down by the New York Giants that almost stole all of the momentum back. And it was one player that closed 30 yards worth of a gap to make sure that that didn't happen. And his name is Terrell Burgess. Terrell Burgess, who I would call a young vet, he's in his 6th year in the NFL. He's not a 10-plus year veteran. He's also not a rookie or even on a rookie contract, but he's freshly off of a rookie contract or a couple years removed from a rookie contract. And so I still consider him a young piece on this New Orleans Saints defense. And of course, a first-year opportunity for him working with Brandon Staley again, but having reunited for the first time here in New Orleans. There was a moment where everybody in the Superdome held their breath and said, oh no, not again. The dome was rocking. Everyone was riding high off the 87-yard touchdown to Rashid Shaheed. And then all of a sudden came this moment. On a 3rd down, a flea flicker, Jackson Dart hands it off to the running back. A running back turns around, tosses it back to Jackson Dart, and then just running down the middle of the field all by himself is wide receiver Darius Slayton, a very good veteran wide receiver in this league, and Terrell Burgess. And Terrell Burgess was standing at the 41-yard line, the opposing 41-yard line, when Jackson Dart let that ball rip. And by the time that ball arrived at the catch point, which was slightly underthrown, at the 11-yard line, Terrell Burgess had closed and was able to make a play on that football. And to me, that was the big-time turning point, and perhaps, as Jordan Howden called it, the play of the game. Jordan Howden said that was the play of the game right there. He said it wouldn't make it into the papers, but that was definitely the biggest play of this game, to which everyone in the room responded, oh no, it'll make the papers. Because we know football here in New Orleans. We know it very well. That moment saved a loss of momentum, created and simultaneously created more momentum inside of the Superdome. It continued the confidence that the New Orleans Saints defense was building, because after that, that was the one of the punts that the Saints forced. And then soon after that, the Saints forced their 5 consecutive takeaways and then a turnover on downs to end the game. And so those moments, and that moment in particular, when Terrell Burgess was able to close on that pass all by himself, there was no help over the top. Nobody else was left. Everyone had come down and sold out to try to stop the run there on that 3rd and short. And then Jackson Dart had it. And yes, Jackson Dart underthrew it, but how many times How many times towards the end of last season did you watch the Saints get a gift like that and not find a way to take advantage of the opportunity? I'm sure you can think of several. Yet here the New Orleans Saints are in this situation at a big moment, at a moment where they're trying to maintain their momentum. They're trying to keep up what it is that they have started in terms of finally getting this big time jolt, the Superdome, feeling like the Superdome, rocking away, all that good stuff. And you make a play like that. Yeah, that's going to go a long way for you. And so that to me was the turning point in this game. Next up, let's get to our player of the game.
This is the Locked On Player of the Game.
And I'm going to cheat because it's players of the game today. I'm going with Kool-Aid McKinstry, and I'm going with Jordan Howden. We're going to save Spencer Rattler here. I think Spencer Rattler deserves some love, but I got a whole third segment planned around him. Rashid Shaheed's gotten some love already, and he's going to get some more. But I'm going to stick with the two defensive players there in Jordan Howden and Kool-Aid McKinstry. Brian Brzee, the defensive tackle, had one of the best punch-outs I've ever seen by a defensive lineman in that play, to where he was locked up on his left hand, got an arm bar in the face of the Giants offensive lineman, and then just reached over with the right hand and punched the ball out of Cam Scattaboo's hands. It drops to the ground. Jordan Howden sees it. He sees green grass in front of him. He scoops it up and just takes off down the field. He said he was running for his life, is the way that he said it. Not too far behind him is Darius Slayton closing in, trying to get the tackle to maybe trip him up. And who else but Kool-Aid McKinstry is up there running step for step with Darius Slayton, blocking and keeping him from being able to get pace or to catch up on Jordan Howden. Kool-Aid McKinstry then follows that up with 2 interceptions, including an interception that I think a lot of people are going to say, well, you should have knocked it down because it would have given the Saints better field position in that situation. But when you're watching a ball in over your shoulder and you're making a catch like he did, like a wide receiver effectively, it's a little bit hard to guarantee you're actually going to knock it down. The last thing you want to do is accidentally tip it up or do something, and then something crazy happens with that football that is oddly shaped, and all of a sudden it goes into the hands of a receiver or something like that. You don't want none of that. You don't want no part in that. Secure that and then get down. And that's effectively what Kool-Aid did, though he looked like he was ready to return it. Then the very next drive, he gets a fantastic interception sitting over the top of a quick slant, which the Saints knew going into this game that slants, digs, like those types of quick routes were going to be things that this Giants offense were going to lean into. He sat over the top of it. I asked him after the game whether it was a film study thing. He said, yeah, it was kind of a film study thing, but also they had run that same little route several times. And so he trusted himself to just make the play on it, rush it, all those things. And he did. And he ends up getting an interception off of a fantastic snag and looking like a wide receiver out there. And then also had a pass breakup in the end zone on Theo Johnson, who caught a touchdown against him earlier in the game. I thought it was a fantastic bounce back game for Kool-Aid McKinstry. I thought it was a fantastic arrival game for Jordan Howden, who was thrown in to a much deeper pool than he had signed up for with Justin Reed, leaving the game with a concussion. And I think both of those guys had their opportunities and rose to the occasion in very big ways. And that's why I've got them as the players of the game. Now, while haven't named Spencer Rattler the player of the game for this one, this game was very important for that player, and he made good on it, potentially extending his lifespan as the Saints starting quarterback. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, the best place to go to get in on all of the NFL action, because the NFL season is underway and FanDuel is giving you an offer that you will not want to miss, especially as a new customer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. All you got to do is pick a bet, put down $5 for your first bet, and then if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app for more lines, spreads. You can dive into some player props. You can go in a same game parlay, some live betting as well. The New Orleans Saints right now, no odds for their game up against the New England Patriots yet next week over at FanDuel, I assume, because as I'm recording this, the New England Patriots are actively playing a football game against the Buffalo Bills. And so we'll see how they open up. But I have a feeling that the Saints are going to open up as home underdogs in this one. Can the Saints keep it going? You can head over to FanDuel.com is where you want to download the app today and get started. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. The New Orleans Saints get their first win of the season, but Spencer Rattler gets the first win of his career as the New Orleans Saints starting quarterback, and I believe might have done enough to keep that runway nice and patient for him when it comes to holding on to the New Orleans Saints starting quarterback position. We appreciate you very much for being here with us. Don't forget, you can catch us every single Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. over on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. And of course, if you're enjoying what you're getting here, we're here with you every single day. So make sure you subscribe, follow, and like these episodes so you'd help other Saints fans find it as well. And of course, so you can be back here with us every single day. The game for me this game for me was one of the most important in Spencer Rattler's career, if not the most important. This was the first time this season that the Saints felt like they were really going up against a team that they should beat, not a team that they could beat, right? There was some conversation about whether or not they might be able to stand up to the Arizona Cardinals, the battered San Francisco 49ers that arrived here in New Orleans. There was an opportunity for them to get a win there with no George Kittle, no Brandon Ayuk, no Brock Purdy. They couldn't do that, but they looked competitive in both of those games. This was really the first time that it felt like the Saints were the better team on paper, right? That they were the more talented team across the offense, across the defense, all that. The Saints have some lingering question marks around their team, and the biggest one is probably still at the quarterback position. Not because I'm saying that anything negative has happened at the quarterback position, but because there are two quarterbacks in the building, right? There is Spencer Rattler, who's a starting quarterback right now, and then there's Tyler Shough, who's waiting in the wings, and he could potentially be the starting quarterback of the future. And anytime that you're in a situation like that, your job as the guy that gets to start at first becomes about helping your team win so that you can extend your opportunities, right? And continue to create your opportunities. And so I mentioned in Friday's episode around this same point in the show, an earnest conversation around Spencer Rattler, where I talked about him versus the business, and that he would need to not just perform well for himself, but he would have to go up against the business and keep the business from moving him or moving off of him, right? And this is the business. When I say that, I'm talking about the NFL, where eventually the conversation was never going to necessarily be around how good or not good is Spencer Rattler, and instead be around how good or not good is Tyler Shough. And the only way for you to figure that out is to be on the field. Well, here's the thing. Spencer Rattler has not given anybody any opportunity or any reason to take him off the field just yet. 21 completions on 31 opportunities, passing opportunities so far in that game. 225 passing yards, one of the best passing yards marks in his career in an NFL season where passing for 300 yards feels like work in this league right now. Did not get sacked once. Rushed 6 times, pick up over 20 rushing yards, had a 7.3 yards per attempt average. That was the highest in his career. Completed the longest pass of his career and walks away with a win against a team that was beatable and a team that they were better than and a team that he needed to be able to show that he could go out and beat, and he did that. And so now you get a New England Patriots team coming to town following this Sunday night football game, and some question marks about whether or not the Saints can turn this into a bit of a streak. And look, there's not really an expectation for them to do so. The Saints were expected to win that game against the Giants, but it doesn't mean that they're expected to all of a sudden turn this franchise around right away and become this incredible football team. But what they showed up against the New York Giants, I think, was important. And what Spencer Rattler showed against the New York Giants, I think, was vitally important to his ability to be able to maintain his opportunity as the New Orleans Saints starting quarterback. Had he gone out there and the Saints lost that game, or he played poorly in that game, then all of a sudden the runway would creep up, right? All of a sudden, Tyler Shough would get closer and closer and closer, and you would start to go, okay, well, now if you look bad up against the New England Patriots too, then it's probably time to get a look at the other guy. That's not going to be part of the conversation anymore. And so now all of a sudden, the conversation around Spencer Rattler, Tyler Shough, Spencer Rattler ends up getting tabled for another foreseeable part of the future, up until maybe the bye week, in which case, if the Saints are eliminated, then maybe there's an opportunity there for them to get a look at Tyler Shough. And then again, that decision becomes about getting a look at Tyler Shough and evaluating Tyler Shough more than it becomes an evaluation of Spencer Rattler. And that right there is the business. And so for New Orleans and for Spencer Rattler in particular, this was a massively important game for him. And he clocked in, he locked in, and he walked out a victor in that moment. And so to me, that probably extends his lifespan, or at least deserves to extend his lifespan as the New Orleans Saints starting quarterback. The Saints still have some things that they need to sort of get figured out here. Blake Grupe missing field goals and all this other stuff. Like that's stuff you kind of got to get taken care of and see where you want to go there when it comes to the field goal kicker and how you want to go about that. Saints really have to get something done with their special teams. There was also a big kick return, but Blake Grupe coming down. How about Blake Grupe with the hit stick on the kick return at one point? And then another thing that the Saints don't necessarily need to be worried about themselves, but that the NFL just has to figure out is what is roughing the passer? Because that roughing the passer call up against Carl Granderson was one of the worst NFL calls that I've ever seen. And oh boy, trust me, I've seen some bad calls. NFL officiating. And that one was one of the worst. I mean, what more can you do? No hit to the head, no hit high, no hit low, didn't land on him. In fact, actually got both hands on Jackson Dart, and then as they went down, immediately pulled his hands off and then landed on his own side. What more do you have to do? What more do you have to do? So that's some of the NFL officiating's got to get figured out. The New Orleans Saints offensive line played really well against a really talented defensive line as well. Just a lot of things went right for New Orleans. And even on top of that, there are still things to continue to build upon. This is not all of a sudden a team that's changed its fortune. This is a team that performed what it needed to perform and now has shown some light at the end of the tunnel. And that's good news for Saints fans. Coming up in tomorrow's episode, we'll take a deeper dive on all this and take a look at what it is that Kellen Moore did to continue to expand this offense and how the Saints defense adjusted so effectively. We got all that coming up for you on tomorrow's episode. We appreciate you very much. As always, making this a part of your day, part of your routine for saying yes to me and to the show. If you see me, please say hi. If you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, N-O-L-A. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing, how you living. Let me know how you momming them. I trust Who Dat Nation. I'll holla at you.